What if in just 30 days you could become a different person? Not someone louder, not someone flashier, but someone more assured, more respected, more at ease with others, and more at ease with yourself. What if 30 days from now you could walk into a room and people naturally gravitate towards you? Not because of how you look or what you wear, but because of how you make them feel. Calm, curious, connected. You wouldn't have to force it. You wouldn't need to pretend. It would be who you are, because it's who you've become. Ladies and gentlemen, I've seen this transformation happen countless times, not in the lives of kings or tycoons, but in ordinary men and women who made a decision to start practicing a new way of thinking and a new way of being. You see, confidence is not something you're born with. It's not something reserved for the chosen few. It is something you build, day by day, step by step. And if you stay with me for this full talk, I'm going to show you exactly how to build it. We'll talk about 7 simple things, 7 habits that will transform how you carry yourself, how others see you, and how you feel inside your own skin. You won't need more talent. You won't need a different personality. You only need the willingness to try. Now, I don't ask that you believe everything I say, but I do ask that you test it. Try it, one day at a time, one small change at a time, for just 30 days. Because when you do, you'll discover something truly astonishing. The person you wish you could become is already within you. He's just waiting for the right habits to bring him to the surface. I once read a letter from a young man who couldn't look others in the eye. He dreaded meetings. He felt invisible in every conversation. But after reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, he made a choice. He would apply just one principle every day for a month. He began to smile more. He made it a point to remember names. He took a genuine interest in others. By the end of those 30 days, something had shifted. Not just in how others treated him, but in how he treated himself. Confidence had begun to take root, not through speeches or showmanship, but through simple daily practice. You see, Abraham Lincoln, one of the men I admire most, once said, "I don't like that man. I must get to know him better." Now that's the spirit of a confident mind, not defensive, not judgmental, curious, open, humble. And it was that quality, more than his intelligence, more than his ambition, that made Lincoln great. In these next few minutes, I will walk you through a series of principles, each one as practical as a handshake and as powerful as a well-timed smile. We'll talk about why the first step to confidence is interest in others, how to speak so others listen and lean in, the silent strength in admitting your own mistakes, how to practice presence, not perfection, and why the most likable people are not performers, but people of quiet purpose. So here is my challenge to you. Don't just listen. Take notes, reflect, and come back to this in a new unit of time. Because if you apply these principles genuinely, earnestly for just 30 days, you will not be the same. You'll carry yourself differently. You'll command attention, not by demanding it, but by deserving it. And most importantly, you'll finally feel what it means to be confident from the inside out. Let us begin. Let me tell you something that may surprise you. And if you want to become more confident, if you want to walk through life with calm, steady assurance, you must start by looking not inward, but outward. That's right. The greatest confidence doesn't come from focusing on yourself. It comes from developing a genuine interest in other people. I learned this truth not in theory, but through decades of observation. I saw it in the young salesman who was nervous before every call, until he made it a game to discover one interesting thing about each client. I saw it in the shy student who felt invisible in every room, until she started asking questions, listening deeply, and making others feel seen. I saw it in myself. You see, when I was a young man, I often felt awkward, unsure. I tried too hard to impress. But the moment I stopped performing and started caring, everything changed. I found that when you turn your attention outward, when you show real, heartfelt curiosity in the people around you, you no longer worry about how you're being judged. Why? Because you're no longer focused on yourself. You become present, you become anchored, and people feel that. They feel seen, and in return, they look at you differently. Let me share a little story. Once, a man named Jim came to one of my courses. He was a junior executive, smart and capable, but nervous in every social setting. He told me, "Dale, I just don't know how to start a conversation." I said, "Forget starting one. Let the other person finish it." He looked puzzled. So I told him this: ask one question about something that matters to them, and then just listen. Not with the intent to reply, not waiting for your turn to talk. Just listen, like it matters. He tried it. He asked his colleague about her children and listened so closely she was still smiling a week later. He asked a client about the town they grew up in, and the client said, "No one's ever asked me that before." In time, Jim stopped worrying about whether he sounded interesting. He focused entirely on being interested. And wouldn't you know it, people started calling him charismatic. They started trusting him more. He became more confident, not because he changed who he was, but because he changed what he gave. You see, confidence is not a performance. It's not about dazzling people or dominating conversations. It's about creating a connection. And that connection starts the moment you say, with sincerity, "Tell me more." It's that simple. And yet, so few people do it. Why? Because they're too busy trying to appear confident rather than becoming genuinely engaged. Now I want to be very clear. This is not a trick. People can spot a fake a mile away. You must mean it. You must truly believe that every person you meet has something to teach you, that every soul you encounter carries a story worth hearing. If you do that, if you let your eyes light up when someone speaks, if you lean in, if you remember their name and the things that matter to them, confidence will no longer be something you chase. It will be something you embody, quietly, consistently, naturally, because when you care, you shine. When you listen, you lead. And when you take the spotlight off yourself and place it on others, something magical happens. You stop worrying how you're being seen, and you start seeing. That's where true confidence begins, not with ego, not with bravado, but with interest. So I ask you, today, can you find one person and learn one thing about them, not for your benefit, but for theirs? Because when you do, when you practice this one simple habit day after day, you'll look up in 30 days and hardly recognize the person you've become. Let me tell you something that may surprise you. If you want to become more confident, if you want to walk through life with calm, steady assurance, you must start by looking not inward, but outward. That's right. The greatest confidence doesn't come from focusing on yourself. It doesn't come from affirmations whispered in the mirror or grand speeches delivered in your mind. It comes from something far more simple, far more human. It comes from developing a genuine interest in other people. You see, true confidence is not loud. It is not brash. It is not puffed up or polished for show. Real confidence is quiet, unshakable, and magnetic. It makes people want to listen. Not because you're shouting, but because you're present, because you care. I learned this truth not in theory, but through decades of observation. I saw it in the young salesman who was nervous before every call until he made it a game to discover one interesting thing about each client, something real, something human. He used to tremble when the phone rang. He was always rehearsing scripts, trying to sound like someone he wasn't. But the moment he decided to focus on the person at the other end of the line, their world, their needs, their dreams, everything changed. He became relaxed, curious, present, and because of that, his tone changed. His clients felt it. They opened up. They responded. I saw it in the shy student who felt invisible in every room until she started asking questions, listening deeply, and making others feel seen. She didn't grow louder. She grew warmer. And people were drawn to her like moths to a quiet flame, and I saw it in myself. When I was a young man, I often felt awkward, unsure. I tried too hard to impress. I thought confidence meant clever words and practiced gestures. I tried to fill the silence with stories and jokes, hoping someone would finally look at me and say, "He's somebody." But the moment I stopped performing and started caring, everything changed. I found that when you turn your attention outward, when you show real, heartfelt curiosity in the people around you, you no longer worry about how you're being judged. Why? Because you're no longer focused on yourself. You become present, you become anchored, and people feel that. They feel seen, and in return, they look at you differently. Let me share a little story. Once, a man named Jim came to one of my courses. He was a junior executive, smart and capable, but nervous in every social setting. He told me, "Dale, I just don't know how to start a conversation." I said, "Forget starting one. Let the other person finish it." He looked puzzled. So I told him this: ask one question about something that matters to them, and then just listen, not with the intent to reply, not waiting for your turn to talk. Just listen, like it matters. He tried it. He asked his colleague about her children, and listened so closely she was still smiling a week later. He asked a client about the town they grew up in, and the client said, "No one's ever asked me that before." In time, Jim stopped worrying about whether he sounded interesting. He focused entirely on being interested. And wouldn't you know it? People started calling him charismatic. They started trusting him more. He became more confident, not because he changed who he was, but because he changed what he gave. You see, confidence is not a performance. It's not about dazzling people or dominating conversations. It's about creating a connection. And that connection starts the moment you say, with sincerity, "Tell me more." It's that simple. And yet, so few people do it. Why? Because they're too busy trying to appear confident rather than becoming genuinely engaged. Now I want to be very clear. This is not a trick. People can spot a fake a mile away. You must mean it. You must truly believe that every person you meet has something to teach you, that every soul you encounter carries a story worth hearing. If you do that, if you let your eyes light up when someone speaks, if you lean in, if you remember their name and the things that matter to them, confidence will no longer be something you chase. It will be something you embody, quietly, consistently, naturally, because when you care, you shine. When you listen, you lead. And when you take the spotlight off yourself and place it on others, something magical happens. You stop worrying how you're being seen, and you start seeing. That's where true confidence begins, not with ego, not with bravado, but with interest. So I ask you, today, can you find one person and learn one thing about them? Not for your benefit, but for theirs. Because when you do, when you practice this one simple habit day after day, you'll look up in 30 days and hardly recognize the person you've become. And here's the most remarkable part of it all. As you grow more curious about others, as you focus less on being interesting and more on being interested, you'll discover something beautiful. People will open up to you. Doors will open for you. Opportunities will present themselves, not because you demanded attention, but because you gave it. You will earn trust. You will earn admiration. You will earn friendships that go deeper than words. And you will look in the mirror not with pride, but with peace. Because confidence will no longer feel like something you wear like a mask. It will feel like something you carry on the inside. And my friend, that kind of confidence is not just powerful, it is permanent. Try it for just 30 days, and I promise you, you will not be the same. What if I told you there's one simple gesture that can change how people feel about you before you even say a single word? What if I told you this gesture can open doors, create instant warmth, and make others feel at ease around you? You don't need money for it. You don't need status, and it doesn't cost you a thing. It's called a smile. Now, before you dismiss that as too simple, too obvious, let me remind you of something I wrote many years ago, and I still believe it to this day. Your smile is a messenger of your goodwill. Let me repeat that. A messenger of goodwill. Because a smile is far more than a movement of the mouth. It is more than muscle memory. It is more than etiquette or social training. It is a signal, a broadcast that emanates from your spirit and reaches people before any word does. It tells the world, "I am glad to see you." It says, you matter. It whispers, I come in peace. And it draws people to you like a flame draws the moth. Let me paint a picture for you. You walk into a room, a meeting, a classroom, a cafe. The moment you walk in, your posture speaks volumes. But more than your posture, more than your dress, more than your voice, what people notice instantly, almost subconsciously, is your face. What is it saying? Is it tense? Is it indifferent? Is it guarded? Or is it open, warm, and relaxed? When you smile, genuinely smile, you send a silent message that says, you are safe here, you are welcomed here. And that is something most people rarely hear. Let me tell you what I noticed over years of teaching public speaking. I watched student after student walk nervously to the front of the room, palms sweating, heart pounding, voice trembling. And the moment they began to speak, if they wore a stiff, forced expression, the audience would tighten. But the moment they smiled, even a small, uncertain smile, the tension broke. The air softened. The audience leaned in. Why? Because a smile says, I am human, just like you. And that, my friend, is how walls begin to fall. You see, confidence isn't about overpowering others. It's about putting them at ease. Confidence is not about being intimidating. It's about being approachable. And a smile is the first invitation. It tells people, you belong here with me. That's the kind of leader people follow. That's the kind of friend people trust. That's the kind of individual who radiates confidence. Not the loudest in the room, but the warmest. Now, let me share a little story. I once met a department store clerk in Chicago, a small framed woman with tired eyes and worn-out shoes. She worked long hours, endured difficult customers, and barely made enough to get by. And yet, every time I saw her, she greeted every customer with the most delightful, genuine smile. I asked her once, why do you smile at everyone like that? She said, because most people are carrying burdens I'll never know about. And maybe, just maybe, my smile is the only light they'll see today. Now that's wisdom. You see, she didn't smile because life was perfect. She smiled in spite of the imperfections. And here's what happened. People returned to her counter again and again. They waited longer just to speak with her. They thanked her sincerely, as if her service had gone beyond product and price. It wasn't the product she offered. It was the presence she gave. That's the power of a smile. When you smile, you create a moment of light in a world that often feels heavy. You become a mirror reflecting back the best in others. And in return, they reflect back the best in you. Here's what I urge you to remember. People remember how you made them feel. Not what you wore, not what you said, but how you made them feel. And the fastest way to make someone feel safe, seen, and accepted is to greet them with a sincere smile. Now, let me be clear. A smile is not a tactic. It is not a tool of manipulation. It is not a trick to get people to like you. It is a gift. And like any gift, it must be given freely, not to gain, but to give. When your smile is real, when it comes from the heart, it becomes a force of nature. It brightens a room. It changes the tone of a conversation. It builds bridges where silence once stood. And the beautiful thing is, you already have it. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to study it. You just have to remember to use it, not as a performance, but as an expression of truth. Your smile says, I enjoy you. It says, I value your presence. It says, you are seen. And in this fast-paced world of distraction and division, that kind of presence is more valuable than gold. Now let us consider the words of Abraham Lincoln, one of the wisest men this country has ever known. He once said, every man over 40 is responsible for his face. At first glance, that may seem humorous, but let it sink in. He wasn't speaking of physical appearance. He was speaking of character. Because over time, your thoughts, your feelings, your attitude, they shape your face. They shape your presence. If you carry bitterness, it shows. If you carry peace, it shines. If you walk through life seeing the best in others, your face will reflect that warmth, and people will respond in kind. So I ask you this. Can you choose today to let your face be a reflection of your heart? Can you let go of the tension, the self-consciousness, the guardedness, and instead offer the world a smile? Not just once, not just when things are going well, but as a way of being. Let it become your habit. Let it become your default. Let it become your identity. Because when you do, when you choose to greet the world with a smile, even on the hard days, you become someone others want to follow, want to work with, want to be around. You become magnetic. And magnetism, my friend, is one of the quietest, most lasting forms of confidence. Let me challenge you. Today, smile at 5 people. Not because you have to, but because you can. Smile at the waiter, smile at the cashier, smile at your coworkers, smile at your spouse, smile at the stranger passing you on the street. Each one of those smiles is a deposit into the bank of human connection, and the interest it pays is confidence. Because when you bring light to others, you start to see yourself differently too. You start to realize that you are not powerless, you are not invisible, you are not alone, you are an agent of change. And it begins with something as simple as your face. So go ahead, practice smiling, not just for 30 days, but for life. You'll be amazed how far that simple habit can take you. Now let us go even deeper. When I say your smile should become your identity, I mean this quite literally. I'm not speaking about artificial cheer. I'm not asking you to plaster a grin on your face and deny the realities of life. I'm not suggesting you ignore pain or cover sorrow. Number A, true smile is not denial. It is declaration. It is the choice to carry light with you, even when the world around you is dim. Let me remind you again, your smile is a messenger of your goodwill. It is the very first sign you give to the world that you are approachable, that you are kind, that you come in peace. In a world filled with hurry, with judgment, with invisible walls between us, your smile is the key that unlocks connection. And confidence begins the moment connection is made. The most charming people I have ever met weren't the richest. They weren't the loudest. They weren't the best dressed or the most educated. They were the ones who greeted the world with joy. They smiled at strangers. They smiled at children. They smiled at janitors, at bus drivers, at the people most often overlooked. And in doing so, they became memorable. They became magnetic. They became trusted. And let me tell you, that trust turned into opportunities, into friendships, into confidence that could be seen and felt by everyone they encountered. Now, here's something I often observed during my courses. Students would come in tense, serious, focused entirely on themselves. They'd sit in the back. They'd cross their arms, their mouths set in a line, waiting to prove their intelligence or guard their image. But then something would shift. One day they'd laugh at a classmate's story, or someone would walk in smiling and say hello, and that crack, that small break in the armor, would become a doorway. I'd see it. Everyone would. The room would change. The air would lighten. People began to open up. And the moment they did, confidence started to take root. You see, a smile doesn't just change how people see you. It changes how you see them. It softens you. It opens you. It reminds you that the person in front of you, no matter how different, no matter how difficult, is a fellow human being. A person carrying burdens, carrying dreams, just like you. And when you see people in that way, you stop competing with them. You stop fearing them. You begin to meet them as equals. Now that is confidence. Confidence rooted not in pride, but in perspective. Let me tell you a story I once shared with my students. There was a man who worked at a train station, an older gentleman who greeted every commuter with a smile and a tip of his cap. Rain or shine, holiday or weekday, he was there, always smiling. One day, a young woman asked him, "Why do you smile at every single person who walks by, even when they never smile back?" He said, "Because someone needs to start." That answer stayed with me. Someone needs to start. Someone needs to be the first to offer warmth. Someone needs to be the first to say, "You matter." Why not let that someone be you? It requires no title, no talent, no permission, only a choice. And when you make that choice consistently, day after day, You build more than rapport. You build a reputation. You become known as someone who brightens rooms, who eases tension, who lifts spirits. And here's what happens. The world begins to reflect back the energy you give. People greet you with smiles of their own. Opportunities seem to open. You get invited into circles, into conversations, into possibilities that were once closed. Why? Because people are drawn to warmth. They are drawn to those who make them feel safe. They are drawn to those who make them feel seen. Now let me offer a word of caution. Do not smile as a tactic. Do not weaponize kindness for personal gain. Because people can feel when it's false. Instead, train your heart to match your face. Think good thoughts. Wish people well. Walk into rooms with the intention to uplift, not to impress. The smile will follow. And it will be real. And when it is real, it will work wonders. You'll find that people are more generous, more receptive, more eager to work with you, follow you, help you. And this doesn't just happen in meetings or on stages. It happens in your home, at your dinner table, in your marriage, with your children. A father who smiles becomes more approachable. A manager who smiles becomes more trustworthy. A spouse who smiles brings peace into the room. It is a ripple effect that begins with one small gesture. And what a gesture it is. Do not underestimate it. For 30 days, I challenge you, smile. Even when you're tired, even when you're busy, even when no one else does. Smile at yourself in the mirror in the morning. Smile at the stranger you pass on the sidewalk. Smile at your family before you say a word. And smile when you pick up the phone. Smile when you open your inbox. Smile as if your confidence depends on it, because in many ways it does. A smile opens the door for connection. Connection builds trust. Trust builds relationships, and relationships, real, strong, sincere relationships, are the foundation of every success worth building. So, I will say it one more time. If you want to become more confident, don't start with a new suit. Don't start with a new title. Don't even start with a new book. Start with your face. Start with a smile. And watch as the world and your place in it transforms before your very eyes. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever walked away from an argument, having proved your point, but lost the person? You won the debate, but something deeper was lost. The warmth, the connection, the goodwill. Was it worth it? My friend, if you want to become more confident, not just in appearance, but in your relationships, then you must learn this truth. You can't win an argument, not really. Oh, you may score points. You may outwit, outdebate, outshout someone. But even when you win, you've really lost. Because nobody likes to feel wrong. Nobody likes to feel humiliated, even politely. In my years of teaching human relations, I've learned this. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Think about it. When was the last time someone argued with you and you said, "You're right, I see everything differently now"? Rare, isn't it? What usually happens if we dig in deeper? We defend ourselves, not because the facts are on our side, but because our pride is. We don't want to lose face. We don't want to feel small. And when you make someone feel small, they will never follow you. They will never truly like you, and they will certainly never feel inspired by you. Let me tell you a story. I once knew a bright young salesman, sharp, persuasive, clever with words, but he had one flaw. He loved to argue. He corrected people constantly. If a customer said the wrong name of a product, he would say, "That's incorrect. Let me tell you what it really is." Technically, he was right. But over time, his customers began to dwindle. People didn't want to be corrected. They wanted to be understood. And so they went elsewhere. Now contrast that with another fellow I knew. A quiet, kind-hearted man who rarely disagreed with anyone outright. When someone made a mistake, he didn't pounce. He'd say something like, "You might be right. That's an interesting point. Here's something I came across the other day. What do you think about it?" And that simple approach, humble, respectful, open, made him one of the most successful salesmen in the region. Not because he had all the right answers, but because he made others feel right. Abraham Lincoln, whom I've always admired, was once known for his fierce arguments as a young lawyer. But he learned the hard way that fighting with people, even in court, rarely produced goodwill. He began to soften his approach, to appeal to people's reason, to their better nature. He asked questions instead of issuing commands. And that simple shift made him one of the most persuasive and beloved leaders the world has ever known. Lincoln didn't argue. He invited, he appealed, and he reasoned. And in doing so, he gained far more than he ever could through conflict. So what does this mean for you? If you want to grow in confidence, not the kind that bullies or brags, but the kind that builds trust and earns admiration, then learn to let go of the need to win. Instead of saying you're wrong, try saying, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought of it that way. Instead of correcting, try asking, would you mind if I shared another way of looking at it? Instead of resisting, try listening, truly listening, not to reply, but to understand. Because here's the truth. When you make people feel heard, you win their hearts. When you make people feel safe, you earn their respect. And when you make people feel valued, you become unforgettable. That's confidence. Not loud, not aggressive, but calm, centered, wise. The next time someone comes at you with a disagreement, smile and say, I see your point. Let me think on that. And then change the subject if needed. Preserve the relationship and save the connection. And walk away with your dignity and theirs intact. In 30 days, you can become a new person, but only if you let go of the need to be right and embrace the power of being kind. It's not about surrendering your beliefs. It's about choosing peace over pride. So, my friend, don't try to win arguments. Win respect, win trust, win people. Because that's the greatest victory of all. What if I told you that the fastest way to build rapport with someone isn't by showcasing your brilliance, but by showing them your humanity? Yes, I've learned through many years, on stages, in classrooms, and face-to-face with people from all walks of life, that the moment you admit your own faults, your weaknesses, your stumbles, something powerful happens. You become real. You become trustworthy. You become someone they can relate to. And let me tell you something I've observed. Criticism closes hearts, but humility opens them. I once made a grave mistake early in my teaching career, and I was conducting a training session, and in front of the group, I corrected one of my students a bit too sharply. I thought I was being helpful, efficient, direct, but I saw the color drain from his face. His shoulders dropped. His voice disappeared for the rest of the session. I had won the moment, but I had lost the man. Later that evening, I found him and said, you know, I was wrong in the way I spoke. I've made that same mistake more times than I can count, and I had no right to call it out the way I did. Do you know what happened? His whole demeanor changed. He smiled. He said, that means more than you know. You see, when you lead with your own faults, you're not diminishing yourself. You're dignifying the other person. You're saying, I've struggled too. You're saying, I'm no better than you. And in doing so, you remove the barrier between you. We're taught to appear strong, to look perfect. But perfection creates distance. Vulnerability creates connection. One of the greatest presidents this nation has known, Abraham Lincoln, was a master of this art. He once wrote to a general who had failed to pursue the enemy after a great victory. Many would have scolded, shamed, perhaps even dismissed him. But Lincoln, wise in the ways of people, began with empathy. He wrote, I am not inclined to scold you, for I am conscious myself of many faults, and I know how hard it is to do all that we could wish. Can you imagine how differently that message must have landed? Instead of shutting down the general, it uplifted him. It restored morale. It invited growth. That is leadership. That is confidence. And that is the kind of man we remember and revere. Now apply this to your daily life. When your child misbehaves, try this. I know how hard it is. I used to make that same mistake when I was your age. When your employee falls short, try this. I've done that too. It's part of learning. Here's what helped me. When your friend disappoints you, say, I've let people down before too. I know what it feels like. That single moment of shared imperfection creates an opening. Suddenly, they're not being judged, they're being understood. And from that soil, confidence grows. Not just theirs, but yours too. Because nothing is more secure than a person who doesn't need to pretend. A man who can laugh at his past missteps, who can say, I was wrong. That man is unshakable. Why? Because his identity isn't wrapped up in perfection. It's rooted in growth. And people gravitate toward that kind of presence. Not because he's flawless, but because he's fearless in his honesty. So if you want to become more confident over the next 30 days, start here. Admit your mistakes freely and cheerfully. Not as a weakness, but as a strength. Not to wallow, but to connect. Try it once and watch what happens. Watch how people lean in instead of leaning away. Watch how tension dissolves and dialogue begins. Watch how your humility gives others permission to be human, too. Confidence isn't about never falling down. It's about standing tall, even when you admit you have. So make this your quiet practice. Before I correct, I reflect. Before I point a finger, I raise a hand. Before I try to be impressive, I choose to be real. That's how bonds are built. That's how trust is earned. That's how confidence becomes unshakable. What if I told you that the key to confidence, real lasting confidence, was not in thinking more about yourself, but in thinking more about others? That the greatest secret to influence, likability, leadership, and connection lies in meeting one simple human need? It's not fame. It's not wealth. It's not power. It's this, the desire to feel important. Every human being you meet, regardless of their age, background, status, or beliefs, is walking through life with a silent question on their mind. Do I matter? That's it. It's not printed on their forehead. It's not spoken aloud, but it is always present. And if you can be the person who answers that question with a resounding yes, then you will unlock confidence, not through dominance, but through significance. I've stood before thousands of people in lecture halls. I've listened to the stories of executives, farmers, students, and salesmen. And no matter how different their lives may look, they all want the same thing, to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. I once met a young man, shy, nervous, unsure of himself, who asked me, "Mr. Carnegie, how do I become more confident?" And I said, "Stop trying to impress everyone. Start trying to make everyone feel important. You see, when you make others feel important, something shifts in you as well. You stop obsessing over how you look. You stop worrying about what others think of you, because your focus moves outward. And when you shift your focus away from your fears and toward their feelings, confidence finds you. Let me tell you something that will change the way you speak to people forever. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. That's not just a quote. That's a way of life. Too many people walk into rooms trying to be impressive, but the person who walks in and genuinely says, "Tell me about yourself. What matters to you? How did you get to where you are today?" That person never struggles to build connection because they're not performing, they're caring. And that is rare, and that is magnetic. Let me give you an example. Back when I was running one of my courses, I had a gentleman named Harold. Now, Harold was sharp, knew his material well, but he came across as stiff and cold. No one in the room seemed to warm up to him. One day I pulled him aside and asked, "Harold, do you remember anyone in this room who asked about you, your life, your dreams, your story?" He shook his head. "No one has." And then I asked, "Did you ask anyone about theirs?" He paused. I didn't. That evening, Harold changed his approach. He stopped trying to be the smartest man in the room. He simply became the most curious. And do you know what happened? Within a week, he was the most liked man in the group. Not because he talked more, but because he listened more. People will always remember how you made them feel. So here is your task for the next 30 days. Every person you meet, whether it's a coworker, a client, a stranger, or your own family, treat them like the most important person in the world. Call them by name. Listen to them without interruption. Ask them thoughtful questions. Notice what makes their eyes light up, and talk about that. And do it not to manipulate, but to uplift. Not as a tactic, but as a principle. Because here's the truth. The more people you make feel important, the more important you become. Not in a prideful way, but in a way that garners trust, respect, admiration, and yes, true confidence. I've seen this play out in the lives of ordinary men and women who decided to live by this principle. The teacher who learned every child's name and greeted them each morning with warmth. The store clerk who remembered his customers' stories and asked about their families. The young salesman who, instead of rushing to his pitch, listened intently to what the customer truly needed. These were not the wealthiest people. They were not the most talented, but they became unforgettable. Why? Because they gave others the one thing the world so often withholds: sincere appreciation. You see, appreciation isn't flattery. It's not sugar-coated praise or empty compliments. It's looking someone in the eyes and saying, "I see you. You matter. What you did mattered." How many people go their whole lives never hearing those words? You have the power to be different. You have the power to build people up, and in doing so, build yourself. That's what I've taught for decades, and I've seen it work, not once or twice, but thousands of times. The men and women who mastered this principle didn't just become more likable, they became more powerful. Not because they shouted, but because they understood. And so I ask you, will you be that person? Will you be the one who walks through the world answering the silent question in everyone's heart? Will you be the one who gives what costs nothing but means everything? You matter. That is the foundation of confidence. That is the secret to influence. That is the mark of a true leader. My dear friend, if you've listened this far, not casually, but with the intention to grow, then I want to commend you, because you've just taken part in something most people never do. You didn't just hear ideas, you invested in yourself. Over the last 40 minutes, we've walked together through principles that are timeless, tested, and true. Let's remind ourselves, not as mere repetition, but as reinforcement. Because the way we build confidence is the same way we build muscle, by practice, by reflection, by repetition. We began by exploring the single most powerful shift you can make, taking interest in others, not performing, but connecting, not impressing, but caring. That's where real presence begins. We spoke of the power of a smile, not as a decoration for your face, but as a messenger of goodwill, a simple act, and yet one of the most magnetic in all of human interaction. We reminded ourselves that you cannot win an argument, not truly, because when you bruise someone's pride, you forfeit their trust, and influence is built on trust, not triumph. Then we learned the quiet strength of admitting our mistakes first, that when you lead with humility, you invite others to drop their defenses, and through honesty, you earn respect. We spoke of giving honest and sincere appreciation, not flattery, but truth spoken with care. Because when you make people feel important, they never forget you, and you never forget your own value either. And we closed with the profound truth that confidence isn't built in isolation, but through elevation, lifting others up day after day. Because the more people you help to feel important, the more you discover how important you truly are. These are not techniques. They are not tricks. They are not games. They are principles. They are habits of mind. They are quiet decisions made every day. To lead with kindness, to live with purpose, and to build not just a reputation, but a character. And here's what I ask of you now. Don't let this speech be a moment. Let it be a beginning. Return to it, review it, reflect on it as you would a treasured letter from a trusted friend. Because the greatest minds in history didn't master great ideas in one sitting. They soaked in them again and again until those ideas became instinct. So listen again, not once, but many times. And with each repetition, you'll find new meaning. With each practice, you'll become a little stronger. And by the end of 30 days, not all at once, but slowly, steadily, you'll look in the mirror and see someone new. Not because you pretended, but because you practiced. Not because you shouted, but because you served. Not because you pushed people away, but because you made them feel like they belonged. So carry this with you. I make others feel valued. That is my power. Say it again. I make others feel valued. That is my power. Hold to that, and confidence will never be far from you. And as you walk through the world in the days ahead, don't strive to be perfect. Strive to be present. because it is in presence, not performance, that real confidence is born. And that, my friend, is something no one can ever take away from you.